training. Today we are going to be talking about authenticity, and this is the third piece of the puzzle for me. So we've talked about power, we've talked about claiming your power, we've talked about getting into a state where you can understand what your power is. We've talked about connection and the importance of being able to connect with other people, the importance of being able to connect with yourself, which is critical. And today we're going to be talking about authenticity. So the key thing with authenticity is a combination of authenticity and authority for me. So when I talked about this yesterday, I said authority, and the two things are really interlinked. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But this is just about, firstly, being yourself, being happy, being comfortable, being confident with who you are, being okay with being open, being vulnerable, acknowledging where you may have gaps. And it's also about allowing any of those voices that tell you it's not okay to be yourself to just go away. And those voices might come from you and they might come from other people. So this is just kind of what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk you through actually how we get much, much closer to our authenticity. So as I've said before, these are the building blocks that I use in my Ignite program, which is launching at the end of March. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about it towards the end. So just keep your eyes peeled for that and you'll get a little bit more. As always, I really want to give you loads and loads of value today. I want you to feel like you've got a lot of stuff that you can take away, things that you can do, actions that you can undertake, so on and so forth. So that's kind of the key thing. So as I said, authenticity, this is all about showing up as you, showing up as who you are, feeling comfortable that the space that you're in is one that actually fits you. And the reason why this is important for leadership is because we need honesty and openness. We need vulnerability from our leaders. The more that you're okay with who you are, the more you're able to pass that on to other people and tell them it's okay to be who they are. It's also about, it's not solely about kind of saying I'm okay and I'm completely solid in who I am. That's a core part of it. But it's also, when it comes to leadership, about saying this is who I am and here's where there's a gap. Here's where there's something that I don't know, something I'm not so solid in. Here's where I need support. Where do I need to be upskilled? Where is somebody else that could help me with this? Where can I pass something on? How can I kind of balance myself out? It's a really, really important part of it, because if we're not showing up as ourselves, we're then kind of pretending a lot of the time that we can do everything, and it's okay that we can't, you know. And it is really important that we're kind of making this space for other people, because it's just a much more relaxing space to be in, you know. And I talked a little bit yesterday about when we start working kind of any capacity, we're obviously learning from everything that's happening around us. We're learning from the people that we see leading about what leadership means. And if we're around people who have the same style of leadership, the same way of leading, we kind of internalize that and we're like, oh, that's the rule for leadership. That's what it means. That's what I have to do in order to lead. And actually, if you're able to be yourself, what we're able to do is say there are different ways of leading. There are different ways of demonstrating these powers based on who I am, based on who you are. And again, it's just a much calmer way of being, right? And also, I think now more than ever, and authenticity is something that's really come up a lot, particularly sort of during the pandemic, around, you know, we're kind of seeing people at home, you're getting a much more natural response from people. I think people are being much more open about their vulnerabilities and so on. So we really want people to just be people. We want to be interacting with human beings rather than having the robot that we've maybe experienced in other scenarios and in different spaces, you know. I don't know about you, but I've definitely worked in environments where there has been an element of robotics from leadership, because, you know, I was working for people who were uncomfortable with admitting that something was wrong, and they were uncomfortable with showing that maybe they were struggling or that things were hard or asking for help. And that makes it very difficult for you to feel that way as well. And it really just takes away a lot of the humanity. And again, as I said yesterday, when it comes to connection, we're human beings connecting. And so if we really understand who we are, we're able to connect with people in a much more kind of natural way. And I want to talk a little bit about when I'm talking about authenticity and authority. What I'm talking about when I say authority is the kind of authority that you earn, not the kind that you take. So the authenticity lets us lead effectively. You know, we're able to hold our confidence, we're able to hold on to that sense of who we are, that assuredness, and that as a result enables you to get authority. You know, if you're talking to somebody who is very confident in themselves, but who's also okay with asking questions and being open, there's a natural authority that they have. So this is not about, I'm not talking about the kind that you automatically take when you become a leader. You don't have to be in a position of power in order to have this type of authority. This is much more about a kind of state of mind type authority. And, you know, we're really looking at kind of leadership, compassion, authenticity first, and then authority comes second after that. And obviously, as I've talked about the last couple of days, there's a real intersection between all of this and the way that we are programmed as women. So we are told that we have to be one thing, but not too much of the other. We're quite often told we're either too much of this, we're too little of that, we're not doing enough of this, we're not doing enough of that. It gets really, really confusing and really exhausting. We get kind of bound up in these rules of, well, this is how you're supposed to be, but the rules are constantly contradicting. So it's like, who am I? Who am I supposed to be? And this is really about actually working out, well, who am I? And then the next step is, I'm okay with who I am. Think how calming that is. Like, just imagine how calming it is to just be you and to not second guess and to not think, oh God, I've got to be something different. I've got to be someone different. Because actually we don't. Those are like, it's all like made up rules. You can just be yourself. I'm also a really big fan of not giving a fuck what other people think. Within reason. I very much care about what you guys think in this environment. It's really important to me. But there are other people who I don't care what they think. I don't care what men think about the work that I do, for example, you know. And so it's easier then to step into who I am because there's a whole bunch of people whose opinions really don't matter. And that's really, really liberating. And that's what I want for you as well. I want you to get to the point where you can recognize the people who actually their opinion isn't important. What they think of you is irrelevant. And you can identify the tribe of people whose opinions you care about and that you want to treasure, but also having that sitting in that space of, well, this is still who I am. I am still me. You know, so that's kind of where I want you to, that's where I want you to get to. So in terms of like the how and the why of how we get there, the first step is knowing yourself. So the self-reflection work that we did yesterday in the connection session, this is really like an important and powerful first step. So obviously we just kind of touched on it lightly, and if this is something that you want to do, really explore it more deeply and understand who you are. Give yourself that space to be honest with yourself about who you are, because that's a real kind of core aspect of it. Sometimes we maybe just don't want to admit a thing about ourselves because actually we think that we might judge ourselves, because we're worried that other people are going to judge us. So we worry that we'll also judge ourselves. So see if you can just kind of sit and like notice things and be like, oh, okay, that's maybe who I am. And this is a thing. What are the things that you care about? What are the things important to you? As I said yesterday, like what are your kind of triggers? What are patterns of behavior you tend to have when you're in a really good place versus when you're maybe not in such a good place? How can you help to understand them a little bit more? What things do you really love? What things are frustrating? What things make you cry? What things make you feel really emotional and giddy with happiness? It's just all of that stuff, because they're different for all of us. You know, how do you like to communicate with people? How do you like to interact? Understanding things like, you know, are you more introverted? Are you more extroverted? All of this stuff kind of helps you dig into it. I would also say, if you haven't, I think, you know, what can be useful, I would say it's useful as an additional tool. It's not an absolute, but looking into some personality tests, things like Myers-Briggs, can be quite helpful to start giving you a little bit of an understanding, because they do tend to be, I mean, mine is certainly fairly terrifyingly accurate. And that can give you a little bit of a sense of, oh, here are things that work really well for me, here are things that maybe don't. So I just recommend that to just help you get a little bit of a deeper insight into who you might be. The next step is accepting who you are with love and compassion. So we can't be judgmental and be kind at the same time. When you think about who you are, all of these different kind of things, if you show yourself kindness and compassion, you're taking the judgment out. And it's the same for anybody else. It's the same when we're kind of dealing with other people, but this is really about you. And that's where I want you to get to when you're kind of looking at all of this stuff. Real kindness, real care, real compassion. And then the third step is owning it. So it's not just like, okay, well, I'm, oh yeah, I have this habit, or there's this thing that I am, or like I'm very loud. So I'll talk about this more. I'm too loud, right? That's my one that I get all the time. I'm too loud. And so owning the fact that, yeah, I'm loud. I am loud. I own that. Some people really don't like it, but I can't change that. I'm loud. And being all right with this. This is like the next step, is owning it. So we just kind of want to go through that phase of like, okay, identify it first, release the judgment, show the kindness, and then we move into the space of, okay, now I own this. Now I'm okay with this. I accept this part of me in whatever way it is, whatever shape it is, and I'm going to give it some love, and I'm going to own that. And it is just, all of this stuff is important for the kind of consistent reasons, because if you're able to show up as you're able to connect with people much better. It's a really important part of powerful leadership, is your ability to demonstrate those kind of positive behaviors to other people, to connect with them on that really human level. It also is extraordinarily liberating. I can't even tell you how freeing it is to be able to just sit in this space of, this is who I am, and be okay with that. Because again, as with everything that we've talked about this week, there are certain people, men with power primarily, and systems, aka the patriarchy, which benefit from all of these double binds that women have been wrapped up in for so long. And a lot of these double binds are our behaviors and how we show up, because we're told, as I said before, we're told, well, we have to be this, but we can't be too much of that. You've got to be confident, but you don't be aggressive or abrasive. Be kind to people, but don't be a doormat. All of those different kind of things, and that makes it quite difficult. So it's all of these kind of systems and these people with power benefit from us staying stuck in that space of, oh, I don't know who I am and I don't know how to be. And we really just want to break out of that, because we've all got the ability to be ourselves. We just need to, much like all of these things, we just need to find the way of accessing it. We need to clear out the old judgment. We need to clear out that programming that tells us that it's not okay. And then we can actually step up into that powerful space. And that's what helps us to really lead in the best possible way. So I used to really care about what people thought about me, even up to kind of starting doing the work that I do now. So I left my corporate job 4 years ago, I think, although COVID does make it very difficult for me to understand the passing of time. But I left my job 4 years ago, and even when I started doing the work that I'm doing now, I was really worried about what people thought of me. Like, how can I show up on social media? I was really struggling to kind of have my voice. How can I talk about this stuff? I also, and this is a really key thing that I know affects an awful lot of women, is I was a perfectionist. I like to say now that I'm a recovering perfectionist, because I'm doing a lot of the work consistently on moving past that. And perfectionism obviously is something that does tend to affect a lot of women. So I thought, God, I have to be absolutely perfect. I have to be absolutely perfect every time I show up, every time I do anything, because people are going to judge me. They're going to think I'm not good enough. They're going to think I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. All of this different kind of things. And that kept me completely stuck and a little bit frozen. So my perfectionism tends to show up as a freeze response. So everyone's can be different, but for me, it keeps me really kind of stuck in this moment. Versus for some people, it might be, I'm going to keep going and going and going and going, and I'm going to make this perfect, and I'm going to find it really difficult to stop. So I have a kind of opposite reaction to it. So I was just freezing up, and I wasn't doing anything. And when you're working for yourself, that's quite difficult, because you need to actually have a business that's running and you're the only person involved in it. So it was something that was making me feel like I was very caught up in that. And interestingly, in my last corporate job, I actually was at a point where I was very comfortable with who I was, and I was very able to step up into my leadership in the way that worked for me. And then kind of going through this change and this transition, again, I was in this different place of, oh God, now I've got to think about all these different people. and all these different things that they think of me, and I've got to get good at these other skills and maybe I'm not so good at them, and so on and so forth. So again, a part of this is the work, doing the deprogramming, doing the deep stuff, building the habits, doing the practice. But I'm now really in a place where I am comfortable with who I am. I recognize the powers that I have and what I bring, but I also recognize where I've got the gaps, and I don't judge myself for them. Or if I do find myself judging, I can take a step back and I can work through that and release it because it doesn't really serve me. The key thing for me certainly has been being all right with not being perfect and completely accepting that I'm not perfect, that I'm an imperfect, messy, sometimes chaotic, often sweary human being who has a whole bunch of thoughts and feelings and reactions and conditioning and old traumas and so on and so forth that make up the person that I am. And the person that I am is able to do the work that I do and do it well because of all of those things. But I don't have to give them all of the power. So how can I reclaim that power for me, and how can I reclaim the power from what I think other people might think, so that I can keep moving and so that I can actually kind of hold myself as I am. And that's kind of a really key thing. So I like to think about if you think about like your personality, right, and just the kind of who you are, I like to think of it kind of, it's like a river, right? So it's at its absolute best, it's a river that is like wending its way through life. It's a combination of being gently formed by the world around it, but it is also carving out its own way. It's also like making space for itself. It's taking up more space and more space. It adjusts where it needs to. It moves and it adapts, but it's always a river. It's always flowing. It's always allowing itself to, it can kind of erode away spaces where it needs to so that it can take up more room. And the kind of double bind of being a woman, the programming that we get from a younger age, the way that the working culture is at the moment, and so on and so forth, is basically like a dam. Just like bam, there's a dam that goes right in to the river that starts to block it because it wants to force it into a new shape. And so what happens then, like that dam is basically like all of these experiences, the pressures, weight of expectations you have if you've got anything like perfectionism and so on. And so what happens then to the river is that it starts to go into a new shape. There's all of this pressure up against that dam, but it cannot get past it because the river's like, well, you're not supposed to be here. This isn't right. This is not the shape that I'm meant to exist in. And of course, as soon as you take the dam away, the river comes flooding through again because the river is still meant to be a river. So that's kind of how I want you to think about your personality and about who you are. This dam is just a thing that's in the way. You're still always a river. And so just kind of think about it from that kind of perspective. I want to give you now some tips on how to really access your authenticity, and I've got a couple of fun exercises to do at the end. So as I said at the beginning, like, get to know who you are. And really get to know, a key thing I would say is really get to understand all the stuff that's the positives. So what are your strengths? Be really honest about what your strengths are, because you know what they are. You know what you're good at. So write all of that stuff down. Write down what you're good at. And those are the things to kind of double down on. If you know that there are areas where they're essential for work, but they're not your strengths, be honest with yourself about that. And then you can enable yourself to take a step to, as I said, delegate, get someone else to do them, find the right kind of training and support, whatever it might be. But like, have that honesty. Focus in on what you love. What things make you really happy? Particularly when you're kind of thinking about your work, what are the things in your work that really light you up? And again, you do know this. You know this deep down. You've just got to give it some space. So combining that with the intuition work that we did in the previous session can be really powerful for helping you to connect with these things that you really love and that are really important. That's the first thing. So the next thing I want you to think about is, what have you been told isn't okay in your personality? So we talked about this a little bit earlier. So for me, it's, I'm too loud, or, as I said yesterday, too emotional. Is it that you get too excited? Are you too bossy? What have you kind of learned that you are too much or too little of? And just have a think about that for a second. Too sensitive. Yeah. Great, thank you. All right. So now think about like what is it that's holding you back from stepping up into owning that and stepping up into um kind of being confident with that. Charlotte says I remember everything. If anyone annoys me, it stays with me. Okay. Yeah, so what is it that keeps you from feeling like you can't own that? Do you have a sense of like where you learned like that's not okay? And then I want you to think about what evidence there is to the contrary that this is a bad thing. So, how might this piece of your personality have served you well in the past? How might it have helped you in any way? And this is part of we're going to do a little bit more around kind of reclaiming that power, but this is kind of the important thing. We want to be looking at how could this be a good thing? How can we rewrite this narrative? Because nobody gets to be the boss of what is good and bad when it comes to our personalities. So Lucy says it's made me passionate and creative. Amazing. So that's such a gift that you have, that actually that sensitivity enables you to have that creativity. And that's really, really important. Now I want you to look at how you talk to yourself. So coming back to what I said earlier about, you can't be kind and judgmental at the same time. Really think about what things you say to yourself, casually in particular. Like, oh God, you idiot. Oh God, you're being such a nag. Particularly when they come to like gendered terms, because those can be ones that they're kind of, I think, very problematic. Where we kind of refer to ourselves as like a bitch, or as I say, a nag, whatever it might be. But just think about like what are these things that you're saying, you know. Mine would have just been, when I was thinking about how I would step up and do anything like this, I would just have a voice that'd be like, well, that sounds shit, that's terrible, that's awful. And that was just kind of constantly running. So just think about what it is, and then I want you to make a commitment to yourself that you're going to start noticing, because that is the first step. We just notice and then we stop it. So when the words come up, if we're really used to it, it can be hard to stop them before they arrive. But when they do arrive, you're just going to say the opposite. You're just going to say, I'm smart, I'm good enough, I can do this, this sounds great. And just keep rewriting that script that's going on in your head, because it's gonna really help, and it will take a little bit of time, but it actually becomes much easier. But really commit to yourself that, like, I'm not going to talk to myself like this anymore. I deserve better. And the less we allow ourselves to talk about ourselves like this, the less we expect other people to talk about us like that. Because if all we're saying to ourselves is nice things, then we're obviously we're going to expect, well, of course everyone else thinks nice things because I think nice things. That's the normal way of behaving. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, you're not going to put up with it if someone else says that kind of thing to you or treats you in that sort of way. You're setting a standard for yourself. And again, super important. So that's the kind of key thing when it comes to how we talk about ourselves. It's really important. Our subconscious is incredibly powerful in that way. What I want to do now is what I call the deal with it exercise, which is actually inspired by the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Weirdly or not, this is something that happens in that movie, and I thought, God, that's really cool. So, as I said, I used to really worry about what people thought, and particularly when I was younger, if there was someone, like, for example, someone that I was dating said, oh God, you like that? Or, oh my God, you did this, with that kind of like, oh, what? I would immediately back away from it. I would immediately try and reshape it into like, oh, well, but not really that much. Or like, oh, but I mean, I used to, but I don't anymore because I'm like much cooler now. For example. So I want you to think about just one thing. So it can be the one that you've thought about already, or it can be something else. But I want you to kind of think about like one thing and one moment when this has come up, and where you've been told, yep, you're to this, or somebody's had that reaction of, oh my God, you cried during Queer Eye. I mean, to be honest, I think everybody cries during Queer Eye, so that's maybe not so unusual. But you know, what is a thing of yours that's just yours? And I want you to now imagine that you're in that moment with a person who is passing some judgment, and I want you to say to them, yep, deal with it. And this is what I want you to take forward. You deal with it, because this is mine. And this is about a reclamation of the power. So that's what this has all been about the last couple of days. And when you're in a moment where somebody has that slightly judgy, they have a judgy tone, they may be out and out say, well, you're too bossy, loud, whatever it might be. If we back away from that, we're backing away from who we are. We're handing the power over to the other person. We're giving the other person the power of determining what is and isn't acceptable about who we are and about our personalities. They don't get to decide that. Fuck that. They don't get to decide that. I want you to reclaim that power. And it can feel strange to start with, but actually, by saying deal with it, what you're doing is you're taking it all back. You're saying, if you think that this thing is strange, that's okay. You deal with the fact that you think it's strange. You deal with the fact that I like this. That's on you. I'm okay with who I am. I'm okay with the power that I hold. I'm okay with the person that I am. And just see how that feels. And you can say it in your head. You don't need to say it out loud to the person. You're just like, yeah, they can deal with that. That's on them. And just really practice this. So this is like a really powerful thing. Like I say, it's about how we exchange power, you know, and I'm not talking about like kind of big aggressive power. I'm really just talking about the power and the influence and the ownership of who we are. You know, don't hand that to somebody else. You know, keep that. That's for you. You know. I want to do a little tapping routine now, which we did one briefly on day one, and I want to just do a bit of tapping and a little bit of energy shifting to get you to completely step up into who you are and to help you kind of do the deal with it. So start by putting your hands on your heart. Take a nice deep breath in. Breathe it out. Lovely. You're just going to move your hands slightly apart, just underneath your collarbone, and just rub here gently. And you're just going to say, sometimes I doubt myself. Sometimes I think I'm too, finish that sentence, too much, too little. Sometimes I feel like my personality is not quite right, that who I am isn't quite right. But I love and accept myself anyway. Even though sometimes I feel like I'm just not right, I'm too much, I'm too little, I'm too loud, I'm too emotional, whatever it is for me. But I love and accept myself anyway. I've spent so long feeling like I'm, and just finish that, to whatever it is. I've spent so long handing my power away. I'm ready to take it back. I love and accept myself. And just start tapping with me. Start tapping here. I'm too. I learned that I'm too. They told me I was too. And it must be true. All these other people, all of society, they must be right. They must be right about who I am. Maybe I'm right about who I am. Maybe I think these things too. I'm too. They must be right. Mustn't they? They must be in charge. They must be allowed to decide who I am. Are they? Are they allowed to decide who I am? I don't know. Don't know how I feel about that. That means they have power over who I am. Maybe who I am is right enough. Maybe this part of me is lovable and acceptable and just right. Maybe it's okay that I'm, and say the word but don't say too in front of it. So for maybe it's all right that I'm loud. There's nobody got to decide where the limit was. Who made them the boss? I don't think I did. I think maybe I'm ready to take that power back. Maybe I'm ready for it to be mine again. Maybe I'm ready to accept myself as I am, with love. I choose to let go of judgment now towards myself. I choose to be kind to myself now. I choose to reclaim the power. I choose to reclaim that power. I choose to back myself. I choose to accept who I am, as I am, right now. That doesn't mean I don't grow. That doesn't mean I don't adapt. That doesn't make me perfect. It just makes me human. It makes me me. And that is absolutely good enough. It's absolutely good enough right now. I'm taking my power back. Okay, what I want you to do is you're going to just thump here on your chest and you're just going to say, I take my power back. Deal with it. I take my power back. Deal with it. My power. My power. My power. Just put your hands on your heart. Take a nice deep breath in. Feel that power. It's all yours. Just keep focusing on what you need to do to reclaim that. Focus on where it might be that you're giving some of it away and how you can reclaim it because it's absolutely yours. As I've said before, I'm so committed to helping as many women as is humanly possible step up into that level of emotional power, getting really connected with all of the skills that they have, all of the things that we as women are conditioned into holding, that we're quite often conditioned into being told are not desirable for leadership. And I want women to be able to access that because we make incredible leaders. We need more. I've said this every day. We need more women to be leading now more than ever. It's incredibly important. So this is why I do this work, is because I want women to really start to take that stuff back. The reason that I've put together the new program, which is called Ignite, is because I want to offer a space where you can actually start to do that on a much, much deeper level. So whilst we're covering these three topics, we've also got additional work that we do, which is around going very, very deep into clearing those blocks. So when you have these moments where you think, oh God, it's really difficult for me to step up into owning who I am, there's blocks there. You know, there are old things, there's old wounds, old traumas. And I do an awful lot of work on a very deep subconscious level to clear that stuff out the way and to get you to the point where you're able to move through. You imagine that basically what I'm here to do is help get that bloody dam out the way. And sometimes some of it can be rooted quite deeply and we need some support finding it. We need support getting it out. And what we want to do is take out these things that tell us that we can't, and we want to program in things which tell us that we can. So that's what the work is kind of about in the main. We're really going kind of deep into allowing you to access that stuff. I'm not really about necessarily doing a load of teaching around leadership. I'm doing some teaching around emotional intelligence and how we can connect with that more. But fundamentally, women are socialized into holding this, as I've said. So how can you actually unlock it? How can you sit in a place of acceptance and confidence with who you are and with all of that power? So that's kind of the sort of main thing. It's for women who are they're either already at a leadership level and they're ready to step up, or they're very close. And there is that disconnect between the intellectual piece of you which says, I should absolutely be ready for this, and the part of you that is holding yourself back. And it's really about getting you connected with how you can become very, very powerful in that place of leadership. So we're running for 2 days on the 21st and the 22nd of March 2022, and we'll be doing so it's an intensive 2 days in a central London location. I really wanted to do it in person because I think we need, firstly, a little bit of a break from doing a lot of this over Zoom, and also I really wanted to do something intense, and I don't want to do that in a virtual setting. So it is quite an intense couple of days, but what that means is that actually at the end of 2 days, you've gone from here to here in the space of 48 hours, because I want these things to happen quickly for the women that I work with. I don't really want to kind of mess around. I don't want things to be slow. I think everyone's busy. We've all got big ambitions and we want to get there really, really quickly. After the 2-day intensive, there's a call each month for the following 2 months. So you essentially have 3 months of support. And the call is to continue to up level, to continue working through anything that comes up for you, to keep holding you in a space of accountability and support for whatever it is that you need to keep you moving through. So what we do is we quite strategically put together action steps towards the end of the 2 days, and those calls are really to make sure that you're working in the way that you need to in order to keep you moving forwards, and that I'm here to help you if you need something, if you've not been quite able to reach the next level that you need to get to. So the cart is open now. Spaces, obviously, because it's in person, spaces are strictly limited. So if you want to find out more, then please do book in a call with me sooner rather than later, and we can have a chat. It's really important to have a conversation, I think, with everyone who's joining. It's an investment in your time, it's an investment in your energy, it's a financial investment. I want it to be right for you and for you to feel like it's the right fit. So I want you to have a space where you can have a conversation with me and ask me some questions. So please do that kind of as soon as you feel, if you're feeling called in any way, just book in a call and let's have a chat. It's no pressure, and we'll just see if it's the right kind of thing and how I might be able to help you. It is $1,495 for the 3 months. I'm offering also a VIP package for a small number of people who would like to go even deeper and have an even greater shift, which will involve 2 intensive one-to-one sessions with me in the 2 months between, so you can have a conversation with me about that. So thank you. I hope you found this useful. I will be sending all of the replays to everyone. The replays will be available on my Instagram, and I'll be emailing them out to anyone who's signed up as well. Please do get in touch if you've got any questions or any feedback or anything you'd like to know more of. It's always lovely to hear from people. I hope that this has been really valuable. As I said, that's kind of been my goal from the beginning, is to give you something that's got a lot of value in it. And thank you very much for those of you who've joined live. It's been lovely to see you here. And for those of you catching up on the replay, I hope this has been a great experience for you as well. And thank you. And you'll be hearing from me soon. Bye bye.
Record.